Hey guys, tonight we drift far, far back, about 4,000 years. Give or take a few clay tablets to the sun-baked plains of ancient Mesopotamia. Imagine, it's early morning. The air is already warming like a slow oven, and the sky above the Tigris River is painted in streaks of gold and dusty blue. You're barefoot, of course. The sandstone beneath your feet is still cool, but not for long. You're standing atop a ziggurat, one of those impossibly squared-off temple towers that look like the leftovers of a forgotten Lego set. In your right hand, a feather fan, ostrich maybe, or a goose if you're unlucky. It's more ceremonial than practical, but you're expected to wave it like the fate of the world depends on it. Spoiler, it sort of does. You're a temple priest, and your sacred duty is to welcome the sun each morning. You do this every day, with great enthusiasm, or at least with the kind of slow-motion reverence that passes for enthusiasm after only 3 hours of sleep and a head full of incense. You stretch your arms. The robes you wear are stiff with desert dust and the faint smell of frankincense. From your high perch, you see the waking city of Babylon, maybe Nippur, or Uruk, depending on what century we're in and who's fighting whom. You hear roosters. A few early merchants are already yelling at each other. Somewhere below, an ox cart creaks along, its wheels sounding like a moody cello solo. This moment, when the sun first peeks over the edge of the world, is when you're supposed to begin. Slowly, with as much gravitas as a barely awake human can muster, you begin to wave the feather fan, left, right, anointing the sun with air, like a celestial welcome mat. You don't know it yet, but you're participating in a ritual that will echo in various forms for millennia. Egyptian priests will later borrow the idea. So will the Romans, albeit with more togas and less liver-reading. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. They're always love seeing how far this sleepy time machine travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun isn't just a fiery orb in the sky to you. It's a living god, Shamash, and your job is to make sure he gets the respect he deserves. Legend says that if Shamash is properly greeted, he'll light the world, keep crops growing, and make sure no one gets mysteriously swallowed by the underworld before lunchtime. No pressure. You stand still, waving the fan, until the sun clears. The horizon, that part's crucial. If you stop too soon, bad things might happen. Or, at the very least, someone in the lower temple staff will blame you for the fish shortage at market this week, as the golden rays begin to crawl over the temple walls, lighting up the baked mud brick like it's been dipped in honey. You take a deep breath. The air smells like morning warm dust, smoke from someone's early cooking fire, and that faint metallic tang you can never quite place. Probably the gods, or leftover incense from last week's rain ritual. Historians still argue whether this sunrise greeting was more religious theater or an actual theological necessity. But here in your sleepy sandals, it doesn't matter. This is what you do, every day, with the same level of devotion as a modern office worker waiting for the coffee machine to finish dripping. Your fellow priests begin to stir behind you. Some yawn, one sneezes. which means something though no one agrees on what. Last week someone said a sneeze at sunrise foretells a good barley harvest. The week before, it meant bandits. That's ancient Babylonian belief for you, firm in tradition, fuzzy on details. And that's okay. You like it that way. Ambiguity keeps you useful and needed. And, if you're lucky, respected enough to avoid feather fan duty on festival days. As the last of the sun's disk lifts into the sky, you lower your fan, not dramatically, just enough to say, "We're done here." A scribe standing nearby notes the time on a clay tablet, which is a generous term for scratches, a symbol into wet mud. Still, it's official. The day has begun. Back down the stairs, carefully, because ziggurat steps are unforgiving and sandals are generously slippery. You pass young apprentices carrying urns of water for purification, which always sounds cooler than it is. Think lukewarm splash bath with awkward chanting. You'll do yours later, before the midday rites. You glance back once. The sun is now fully up, golden light stretching across the dusty plain, illuminating the city's narrow streets. Its leaning clay walls, its many rooftop gardens. The whole world feels ... okay. Maybe even blessed. Or maybe that's just the heat starting to rise and confuse your brain, as you trudge back toward the inner temple. A rooster struts across your path with the confidence of someone who doesn't know how tasty he is. You let him pass. He's part of the cycle too. Sacred, maybe, or just lucky. Either way, the day is young. Your shift is far from over, and there's still the small matter of divine breakfast to prepare. But we'll get to that for now. The sun has been greeted. The fan has done its job, and you, bleary-eyed priest of ancient Babylon, are one sunrise closer to the festival where they might let you sit in the shade. You make your way down the steps of the ziggurat, moving slowly, not because of reverence, though that's a good excuse, but because your knees are already filing a formal complaint. The sandstone stairs are narrow, worn, and a little too steep for comfort. Your feather fan trails behind you like a sleepy tail, and the rising heat begins to crawl up your neck, settling like an invisible scarf you didn't ask for. The temple complex below stretches out like a labyrinth of sun-drenched stone and cool shadows. You've been walking these corridors for years, but somehow it still feels like a maze built by someone with a grudge against symmetry. You duck under a low lintel seriously, who designed this place for hobbits, and step into the cool gloom of the inner passageways. Inside, the temple is surprisingly hushed, not silent, never silent, but quiet in the way that old libraries and overly formal dinner parties are quiet. Stone walls echo faintly with the drip of water from some hidden cistern, and you hear the soft slap of sandals on clay floors. The air smells like damp stone, burnt myrrh, and the faintly medicinal reek of something once alive being offered to a god. You move past a row of shallow niches carved into the walls, each holding a statue, or a half-statue, or possibly just a really stylized chunk of rock someone once claimed looked like Enki. It's easy to get carried away with divine resemblances in low lighting. Somewhere deeper in the temple, a chant begins, low rhythmic, and just slightly off-key. It's the temple choir. Not the good one, the apprentices probably. They're rehearsing for the mid-morning offering, and it's not going well. You catch the refrain, a prayer to Ishtar, goddess of love, war, and extremely confusing personal relationships. The melody sounds like someone dropped a lyre down a well. You keep walking. Historians still argue whether temple chanting followed strict musical notation, or was more free-form, like a Mesopotamian jazz solo with gongs. Whatever the truth, you know one thing. There's a fine line between divine praise and noise complaints. You take a sharp right past a scribe asleep on a bench. Stylus, still in hand, and step into the hallway leading to the priest's quarters. This is where the real gossip simmers. Sacred texts may be written in cuneiform, but temple drama, that's written on the air. You hear two senior priests whispering by the incense storeroom. Something about the high priest misplacing a ritual dagger. Again, one of them mentions last week's omens being misread. A goat trotted left instead of right, and someone took it as a sign of impending flood. It rained for 5 minutes. Panic over. You nod politely and keep walking. The politics here are as thick as date syrup and twice as sticky. Everyone wants divine favor, but few want to do the sunrise fan dance or wash the sacred bowls. You at least have accepted your fate. That feather fan and you are practically married. You reach the small side altar of Nabu, god of wisdom and scribes. A faint smear of ink stains the offering table. Someone's been drafting texts again and forgot to clean up. You smile. Nobu would probably approve. He's the patron of learning, after all, and he's said to enjoy the occasional ink's forehead. You pause for a moment. It's peaceful here. Light filters through a carved window, casting lattice shadows across the floor. You can hear the temple pigeons cooing outside, their sleepy warbles echoing off the stone. Someone's sweeping in the courtyard. The bristles scratch rhythmically against the ground, almost soothing. You rest the fan against the altar and sit on the low stone bench. Just for a moment. Just to close your eyes. But of course, closing your eyes in the temple of Enlil is a bit like trying to nap in a train station. You're almost immediately interrupted. A young acolyte scurries in. Eyes wide, robes half tucked. He blurts something about the ceremonial oil being delivered late. Again, you wave vaguely and mutter something priestly about patience being a virtue. He bows and bolts. You've bought yourself 10 minutes. It's hard not to laugh sometimes. This entire temple hums with sacred chaos. Everyone's so worried about getting rituals exactly right, measuring incense grains, arranging fruit on the offering tables, just so. Debating whether the sun rose 2 finger widths or 3, but no one can seem to keep the goats from eating the garden herbs. And yet, somehow, the gods seem to be mostly fine with it. You get up and collect your fan. It's slightly bent now, one feather drooping like a tired eyebrow. You'll fix it later, probably, maybe. Or just claim it adds character. Divine tools are allowed to show wear, right? On your way out of the side chamber, you nearly trip over a pile of clay tablets stacked precariously like someone's forgotten to-do list. One of them tumbles and you catch it mid-air, barely. The inscription reads something about harvest predictions and an upcoming lunar eclipse. You sigh. That means more chanting, more guessing what entrails are trying to tell you. And inevitably, more arguing with the astronomy priest, who insists on correcting everyone. You carefully return the tablet to the stack, giving it a little pat like it's a sleeping cat. No need to anger Nabu more than you already do by existing near his things. Your next stop is the inner sanctum, where the senior clergy gather for the mid-morning prayer. You pass under another lintel, this one covered in carvings of winged bulls and starburst sand. The smell hits you, warm oils, burning juniper, and a hint of something animal-based you choose not to think too hard about. Inside, the priests are gathering. Their robes are a touch fancier, their feather fans newer. One even has gold embroidery. You take your usual spot, slightly to the left, slightly out of the way. You're not the loudest voice, or the holiest, but you're dependable. You show up. You wave the fan. You chant in tune mostly, and as the prayer begins again, the same low rhythmic hum you've heard 1,000 times before, you realize this is your world, sacred, strange, and just a little sleepy around the edges. You're hunched over a smooth slab of dark stone, squinting at a piece of clay that's more stubborn than sacred. It's still soft barely, but the stylus skips every few strokes like it's got stage fright. Across the tablet, rows of tiny wedge-shaped impressions pile up like organized ant colonies. Cuneiform, the world's most finicky handwriting. Your job right now, divining the will of the gods through math, or, more accurately, through star charts, squiggly horizon lines, and whether or not a cloud drifted the wrong way during last night's moonrise. Yes, your life involves long mornings spent deciding if Jupiter being too close to Mars means someone's about to get stabbed at the fish market. This is the less glamorous part of being a Babylonian priest, though. Let's be honest, waving a feather fan at the sky was never exactly red carpet material. But here, surrounded by maps of stars and tables of numbers etched into clay, you feel something weirdly thrilling. You're not just a servant of the temple. You're a cosmic interpreter, a divine meteorologist, but with more omens and fewer umbrellas. You mutter under your breath as you etch the next symbol. The chart you're working on tracks the movements of the planet Venus, the goddess. Inanna rides that particular celestial body, which means when she does something dramatic in the sky like vanish, for a few days it tends to stress people out. Farmers worry, kings send messengers, merchants cancel trade expeditions. No pressure. You adjust the clay a little, the cool surface resisting your touch. Around you, other priests are hard at work on similar tasks, copying eclipse cycles, cataloging solar flares, and arguing over whether yesterday's comet was actually a comet, or just that weird guy from the outer villages burning reeds again. Historians still argue whether Babylonian astrologers truly believed in every omen they recorded, or if some of them were just playing celestial improv to satisfy their clients. You suspect a bit of both. You've seen senior priests change predictions mid-ritual if the wind picks up, or a goat sneezes too loudly. Speaking of goats, yesterday's goat, the one used in the liver reading, you still can't get the image out of your head. There you were, elbow deep in ritual entrails, trying to look wise as everyone stared at you like you were about to unveil divine secrets. Really, you were mostly just trying not to drop the thing, and yet, there's a strange satisfaction in it all. The rhythms, the rituals, the belief that the universe isn't chaotic, that the gods are leaving you messages, if you can just squint hard enough and read between the stars. Or the intestines. You pause and roll your shoulders, the stiff fabric of your robe creaking in protest. Your knees ache from too much crouching. Your eyes blur from reading tablets in candlelight. Your mind wanders to the small bottle of palm wine hidden behind the broken incense urn. It's not official temple stock, of course. Just medicinal. For the stress, definitely medicinal. You glance up as a colleague plops down beside you with a clay map of the constellations. He gestures toward a cluster of stars you've seen 100 times. If this one's rising, he whispers, and the moon is full, then shouldn't that mean that the fish god is angry? You whisper back, trying not to laugh. Or that someone in the king's court will lose a sandal. Hard to say. He snorts, then smothers it into a cough when the chief astrologer glares from across the room. You both go back to work. In truth, you don't laugh at the stars. Not really. Their patterns are hypnotic, reliable. They give you something most of temple life does not: structure. The constellations always return. The planets always move. And if you squint, they almost seem to tell a story. A divine script you're slowly learning to read. You look again at Venus's path. She's due to disappear from the night sky for 8 days. That's bad, or good, depending on who asks. You make a mental note to recommend extra incense during next week's offerings to Inanna. Just in case she's planning anything dramatic. Outside a bell, toll soft metallic, a little lazy. It's the 3rd hour, time for your midday meal. Or, if you're unlucky, another round of interpreting weird dreams that nobles had after drinking too much fermented date juice. You roll up your scroll of notes and tuck the stylus into your sash. As you stand, your back cracks loud enough to wake the dead door, at least the more sensitive temple spirits. You groan, not reverently, just old lie. On your way out of the room, you pass a freshly pressed tablet that catches your eye. It's a record of last week's lunar eclipse, written in beautiful script by the head astronomer. The entry ends with the phrase, "The gods are watching, but their eyes may be half closed." You smile, poetic, and possibly true. Back in the corridor, a servant brushes past you carrying a tray of boiled lentils and what might once have been bread. You don't ask questions. Temple food is like celestial prophecy, occasionally nourishing, rarely clear. You settle onto a bench near the southern window, squinting through the haze. The city beyond the temple walls is busy. Figures dart between stalls. Children chase each other around carts. And somewhere, a flute plays a tune you almost recognize. Maybe from last year's festival. Or maybe just something made up on the spot. You munch on the lentils. They're bland as usual, but warm and somehow comforting in their dullness. Like most things in temple life, repetitive, dusty, sacred but steady. A young apprentice sits nearby, awkwardly cradling a cracked tablet. "Master," he whispers, "if a man dreams of losing his shoes while standing on a fish, what does it mean?" You take a long, slow bite of bread and chew thoughtfully. "That he should avoid puddles," you say. The apprentice stares at you. You nod gravely. He writes it down. Another prophecy delivered. Another weird dream interpreted. Another star aligned with another goat liver. And in all of it, a quiet rhythm. A daily whisper of meaning. Of order. Even if it's covered in fish scales and ashdot, you drag the palm of your hand across your forehead, smearing a thin sheen of sweat that's been collecting since the 3rd hour. Babylonian summers are not kind. They don't ask permission. They just arrive relentless, sticky, and fully committed to melting your bones. The temple's stone walls help a little, but not enough. It's not even noon yet, and already you feel like a half-baked loaf of barley bread. Still, duty calls. You step into the ritual courtyard, where preparations are underway for today's solar supplication. No, it's not a holiday. No, there's no parade. It's just one of those sacred every few days routines that must happen because, well, the sun hasn't exploded yet. And that seems worth celebrating. A row of junior priests are fussing over ritual garments in bleached linen. Robes that are basically hot towels with sleeves. One is attempting to tie his sash with the solemnity of a soldier, but it keeps flopping to one side like it's just given up on life. You try not to chuckle, but you fail. You adjust your own robes with a little extra flair, not because you care, but because someone has to show these rookies how to wrap a waistband without looking like they just woke up in a mud hut. The temple's oldest steward, a man whose wrinkles have their own postal code, is carefully unpacking the ceremonial objects. Bronze bowls, obsidian blades, and of course, a new fan, yours. It's enormous. The feathers are pure white, freshly cleaned, and absurdly fluffy like a sacred ostrich auditioned for a cloud. You take it from his hands with as much dignity as possible. It wobbles slightly, very majestic. The steward mutters something about the feathers being arranged in solar sequence. You nod like you know what that means. You don't. No one does. But it sounds important. Historians still argue whether these feather fans had symbolic meaning, representing wind, purity, or divine breath, or whether they were just a fancy way to shoo flies during long ceremonies. You suspect the truth lives somewhere in the middle. Like most things, the sun hangs just above the temple's eastern edge. Now, pouring gold across the courtyard. Light dances on polished stone, casting hard shadows and dazzling halos around the high altar. This is where it happens. The ritual, the prayer, the waving. The awkward sweating. You take your place behind the senior officiant, a man with such a grand beard it deserves its own honorary title. He gives you a brief nod, then raises both hands as the others fall silent. There's always that moment, right before it begins, where everything seems to pause: the city noise, the pigeon coos, even the hot wind. You can almost imagine the gods leaning in, waiting to see how you'll perform this time. Whether the feathers will flutter just right, whether your chant will hit that perfect tremble. You begin to sway the fan. Slow, steady, controlled. Each movement arcs through the air like a prayer without words. The feathers ripple like waves, catching the light. It feels strangely graceful, like you're painting on the sky. The officiant starts the chant. A low rumbling prayer to Shamash, god of the sun. His voice is deep, scratchy, and oddly musical, like an old drum being struck underwater. The others join in. A dozen voices rising and falling in a language older than any of your bones. You keep waving. The motion becomes rhythmic, meditative. Your shoulders ache, sure, and your wrist is plotting rebellion, but you keep going, because this is what keeps the world spinning, right? This strange, sacred choreography. Sun rises, fan waves, priests chant, repeat. A fly lands on your eyebrow. You do not react. You are above such mortal concerns. You are a divine air conditioner. You glance out toward the city beyond the temple walls. Babylon hums. Merchants shout. Wheels creak. Someone, is playing a flute badly. But here, inside these hallowed stones, time feels thick, like honey poured into a clay jar. You've done this ritual at least 100 times, but somehow each one feels different. Maybe it's the air, or the angle of the sun, or the way the officiant forgets part of the chant and mumbles through it like nobody noticed. You noticed, still. It ends the same way every time, with the bow, the final motion of the fan. The long, slow sweep across the sky, as if to say, "We see you, son. Please don't explode today." You lower the feathers with reverence, sweat trickling down your back like a whispered complaint. The chant fades. Silence returns. Briefly then comes the applause. Not from the gods who, if they're clapping, are doing so quietly, but from the children perched along the temple walls, giggling behind fig leaves. One calls out, "Do it again," and is promptly hushed by an elder who once threw a sandal at a goat during last year's eclipse. You step back, nodding to the officiant. He's breathing heavily now, beard slightly askew. Rituals take their toll, even when you've done them longer than most people have been alive. You offer him a sip from your watuskin. He accepts, muttering thanks, then complains about how much better the chants were 30 years ago. You smile, of course they were. Back in the temple halls, you finally get a moment to lean against the cool stone. Your arm trembles slightly from holding the fan. You stretch your fingers, grateful they haven't turned to dust yet. One of the younger priests approaches, eyes wide. "You made it look easy," he says, eyes drifting to your still glowing feather fan. You smirk. "That's the trick," you say. "Look divine." Sweat silently. He looks inspired. You feel old as you return the fan to its storage case. Cedar box lined with palm fiber. You notice a small inscription etched on the lid. It's in Old Akkadian, almost faded. You whisper it aloud. "Wings of order, dance of wind, hush." The fire above. It's probably a poetic metaphor, or someone just got dramatic with a chisel. You rest the fan gently inside. The feathers shift, settling like sleeping birds. You run one finger along the edge. For all its fuss, the fan really is beautiful. A handmade miracle of plumage and patience. And in the silence of the fan chamber, you feel something small and strange, gratitude, maybe. Not from the gods, necessarily, but from the routine, from the act itself, from the fact that, once again, you helped the sun rise, even if it didn't need your help. Later that evening, as the last amber light slips off the ziggurat's edge and the shadow of the temple stretches long across the courtyard, you're summoned again. Not for waving, not for chanting, for watching. Tonight, it's your turn on celestial patrol. You climb the narrow spiral staircase to the observatory, if you can call it that. It's more of a glorified platform on the temple's roof, with just enough space for 2 scribes, a star map, and the slightly paranoid idea that you can predict the future by staring at tiny glowing dots. You arrive just in time to watch the first few stars poke their sleepy faces through the purpling sky. The air is cooler now. Finally, you exhale like you've been holding your breath all day. The roof smells of sun-baked stone, old incense, and something distinctly birdy, probably from that rogue ibis that's been haunting the corner. You make a mental note to avoid stepping in any divine droppings. Your companion tonight is Tana's, one of the temple's few female astrologer scribes. She's already unfurled a star chart and is using a thin stick to point out constellations as they appear. There's the lion, she murmurs, and the scales right behind. She doesn't look up from her chart. You admire that about her. She treats the stars like old friends, not distant, unknowable fireballs of mystery. More like nosy neighbors who happen to shine. You settle beside her, stretching out your legs and glancing upward. The sky is shifting now. What was a calm indigo has deepened into velvet black, sprinkled with the earliest stars, soft, blinking, undecided. Venus is still absent, hiding like a diva on her backstage break. But Mars is there, bright red, slightly obnoxious. Did you bring the oil lamp? She asks, not looking up. You fish it out of your sash. She lights it with a practiced flick, and suddenly the chart glows like a treasure map. She squints at the horizon. The bull's late tonight. Probably stuck in traffic, you offer. She snorts. That or the gods are rearranging furniture again. Historians still argue whether Babylonian stargazers truly believed the stars caused events, or if they simply saw them as signs like celestial post-its from divine bureaucrats. Frankly, you think the truth is more entertaining. Sometimes it depends on whether the king liked the prediction. You help Tanas align the Nomana slim rod you poke into the platform to help track the angle of starlight. It casts a delicate shadow over her parchment. She adjusts her calculations with the care of someone performing surgery on a particularly delicate fig. Below, the city of Babylon is slowly turning in for the night. You can hear distant singing, the clack of pottery being stacked, the soft thump of someone probably trying to chase a goat indoors. The urban lullaby of civilization. You shift your gaze back to the sky. Tonight's task is simple. Monitor the progression of the stars across the ecliptic, and note any anomalies. Comets, odd flickers, mysterious hazes, anything that might signal war, plague, or another round of the king's unfortunate poetry readings. The stars inch slowly westward, pulled by the turning earth, or, as the elders say, carried by invisible hands through the dome of heaven. You don't argue with the metaphor. It's late, and your brain is half porridge. Tanas mutters something and leans forward, peering hard at the southeastern quadrant. There's movement, she says. You follow her gaze. A small light faint, erratic just below the archer's knee. It's pulsing oddly, like it can't decide whether to blink or flare. You both stare at it, in silence. Comet, you whisper, maybe, could be a trick of the atmosphere, or one of those sky owls again. She scribbles it down anyway, careful, to note the time, direction, and brightness. Later, this observation will be compared to old records, matched against prior omens. Someone will interpret it. Probably someone wearing more beads than sense. Tanas leans back and exhales. Remember the last time we saw one this early in the season? You nod. The summer of the double eclipse. She shudders. Don't remind me. I still have nightmares about that barley riot. You both sit in silence for a while, letting the sky roll over you. The stars move so slowly that it's hard to notice, until suddenly they're somewhere else entirely, and you wonder how you missed it. You pull your robe tighter against the evening breeze. Do you ever think they're watching us? You ask. The stars? You nod. She shrugs. If they are, I hope they're enjoying the show. We're certainly giving them enough drama. Down below, a temple bell tolls one long low note. It's a signal for third night prayer. Neither of you move. You've already done your rituals today. This part, the watching, the waiting, feels just as sacred and quieter. You glance over at her chart again. It's covered in symbols, swirls, dots, and numbers that make sense only if you've trained your whole life to read them, or if you're a particularly clever goat. You respect both. I think the bull's finally here, she says, pointing. You spot it too, Taurus, horns gleaming faintly in the northeast. Right on schedule, probably. There's something comforting in that. No matter what madness happens in the temples, the markets, or your joints, some stars always show up. You make a note. Bull appears. Light steady, sky clear, possibly watching back. Tana's raises an eyebrow. That last part seems editorial. You grin. So are most omens. The wind picks up slightly, rustling your robes. You both huddle closer to the oil lamp, its tiny flame wobbling, but not giving up. You stay on the rooftop until the final hour of the night shift, watching the sky crawl, your legs numb, your notes messier than they should be, but it doesn't matter. You've seen what you needed to see. Or, rather, you've seen what the gods allowed. As the horizon begins to pale and the sky softens into its pre-dawn hush, you gather the scrolls and charts. Tana's stretches, bones cracking like ancient papyrus. Same time next week, she asks. If the stars don't rebel, you reply. You descend the spiral staircase, already dreaming of breakfast bread and maybe, just maybe, a nap long enough to forget your spine exists. The sun's not up yet, but it's close. You can feel it humming somewhere behind the sky, getting ready to rise. And when it does, someone will be there to wave a feather fan at it. Sleep still clings to your limbs like wet linen, but it's barely dawn, and the temple is already awake. You can hear the soft rush of sandals against stone, the groan of the bronze gates opening, and somewhere annoyingly the chirp of a bird who's clearly far too cheerful for this hour. You yawn, stretch, and mutter something unholy toward the general concept of mornings. But then you remember, today is a procession day, and suddenly you're more alert. Because processions mean drama. You throw on your robes, shake out the creases, like a half-awake laundry priest, and step into the courtyard just as the sky shifts from charcoal to gold. The sun hasn't quite breached the ziggurat's rim, but the air is already alive with purpose. In the center of the square, workers are assembling a grand litteran, enormous, gold-trimmed platform that'll carry the temple statue of Shamash through the city. The statue itself, of course, is still being awakened, which is a polite priestly euphemism for gently dabbing sacred oil onto its bronze eyelids while whispering compliments into its metal ears. That task falls to the dream interpreters, who double as statue whisperers on festive mornings. One is murmuring to the statue right now, likely something along the lines of, "You look positively solar today, my lord." You try not to laugh. You fail again. The feather fan lies in its case, freshly fluffed and ready. Today, you'll carry it not for waving at the sun directly, but for shielding the god from common air, because, obviously, divine bronze can't be expected to breathe the same molecules as cobblers and pickpockets. Historians still debate whether these processional fans were meant purely for status display or had some ceremonial purification purpose. You suspect both, plus a healthy dash of just looks fancy. You take your place among the attendants, carefully balanced between the incense bearer and the drummer with the lazy eye. Your fan is bigger than usual, white ibis feathers trimmed with gold-threaded reeds. Heavy, too. You'll definitely need a shoulder massage after this. If the gods believed in shoulder massages, they don't. The sun crests the eastern ziggurat tier at last, casting long beams down into the courtyard. Trumpets sound, not the fun kind, the loud kind. The kind that make pigeons flee and your eardrum twitch. The high priest steps forward and raises his staff, signaling the beginning of the march. And off you go. The procession winds slowly out through the temple gates and into the waking streets of Babylon. Already, crowds are gathering. They press close, but not too close. Guards with long sticks make sure of that. Children dart between legs, tossing flower petals and occasionally picking them back up to toss again. You spot one kid eating his petals. He's committed to the moment. The statue of Shamash looms behind you, perched on its litter like a king on vacation. Its bronze face reflects the morning sun, and for a moment you swear it looks almost amused. Maybe the whispering worked. You wave the fan slowly, with the ceremonial grace of someone who's done this 50 times and still hasn't figured out how to avoid elbow cramps. The feathers sweep gently through the air, not quite cooling, but definitely majestic. You're basically a wind god at this point, or at least a breeze in turn. The drummer starts a steady beat. Boom, boom, boom. Your steps match it. Everything matches it. Even the shopkeeper sweeping his doorway falls into rhythm, as if the city itself is momentarily choreographed. You pass beneath a stone archway where vines curl lazily down the sides. Someone has hung garlands for the occasion. Probably the baker's daughter. She always goes all out. You catch the scent of rising yeast and warm dates as you pass her stall. And for a brief, blasphemous second, you consider whether bread would make an acceptable offering. The high priest pauses to recite a blessing at the crossroad. He chants in that deep, resonant voice, words thick with history and incense. You keep waving. Your fan casts slow-moving shadows across the statue, giving it the illusion of movement, like Shamash himself is stretching, or blinking, or thinking. Why is that kid eating petals? Up ahead, a group of acolytes begin their sun hymn, lilting. Melodic piece that was probably meant to be haunting but instead sounds like someone taught goats to harmonize. Still, it's traditional, and traditions don't argue. You pass the market square now, where vendors have paused their shouting to kneel in respect. Except for one fish seller who just can't help whispering, "Fresh carp, 2 for 1. Between bows, he sees you watching and mouths, "It's a holy deal." You suppress a grin. Barely. The heat builds. Your robes stick. The fan grows heavier with each block. But you keep the motion smooth, the arc perfect. This is performance. This is liturgy. This is arm day. You glance behind you. The light reflects off Shamash's chest, catching dust in golden swirls. For a second, the world looks paused, frozen in reverence. Then the moment passes, and the city resumes its buzz. After a final loop around the inner wall, the procession returns to the temple. The statue is guided back to its chamber. Another round of whispered compliments. The fan is finally allowed to rest. You lower it like a soldier sheathing a sword. You step aside as the attendants rush in to undress the statue carefully. Of course, and only in approved ceremonial ways. One misstep, and you'll end up with a cursed breakfast for weeks. You sit on a low bench in the corridor, flexing your wrist and stretching your back. A young apprentice passes you a drink of cool urban-fused water. You thank him with a nod. He stares at the feather fan, wide-eyed. "Do you think he saw us?" he asks. You know who he means: the sun, the god, the statue. Maybe all three. You shrugged. "I think we waved loud enough." He laughs, a little nervously. "What if we didn't?" You lean back, close your eyes, and smile. "Then we try again tomorrow." It's late afternoon now, and the temple is quieter. No trumpets, no parading statues, no children hurling flower petals like confetti. Just you, a few lingering priests, and the sound of sandals scuffing lazily across sun-warmed stone. Somewhere in the distance, someone is attempting to play a flute. Badly you try not to feel personally attacked by the off-key notes after a quick rinse in the courtyard. Basin cold enough to make your teeth try to escape your summoned for something even more sacred than a sun ritual. Inventory. Yes. The great and mighty temple of Shamash, protector of justice, arbiter of light, requires someone to count things. Today, that someone is you. You follow the assistant scribe down a narrow hallway lined with painted tiles, reds, blues, golds, each cracked slightly by time and sandstorms. The corridor leads to the treasury chamber, tucked just beneath the rear altar, where only trusted hands, and, apparently, you are allowed. Inside the treasury, its cooler thick walls, no windows, a lingering scent of frankincense and the faint musk of old papyrus scrolls. Shelves line the walls, stacked with clay tablets, bundles of reeds, jars of oil, and boxes containing feathers, beads, and ceremonial tools. Your task: count the feather fans. Exciting, right? Not just any fans, though. These are sacred items, each assigned to different occasions: morning worship, royal processions, purification rites, and the especially rare night of the whispering sky. Which sounds romantic, until you realize it mostly involves chanting in freezing darkness while holding a fan upright for 6 hours. The assistant opens a clay tablet log and hands you a stylus. Mark each item as present. If it's missing, he says, already backing away, pray about it. You raise an eyebrow. No backup stock. He laughs. The gods don't do backups. You begin the count. Fan number 1. Large white ibis feathers, gold-stitched base, used for sunrise invocation. Still smells faintly of cinnamon and stress. Present. Fan number 2. Dyed lapis blue goose feathers, stiffened with palm resin, used during eclipse rituals. Historians still argue whether the color blue was symbolic of the heavens or just meant to distract terrified spectators. You mark it down. Fan number 3. Peacock feathers, yes, imported. Yes, absurdly expensive. Only used once a year during the Festival of Divine Glances, which is a lot more awkward than it sounds. Essentially, you wave the fan at the statue while reciting flattering phrases like "O eye of radiant light" and "Blessed be your symmetrical nostrils." Fan number 4. Missing. You blink. Check the shelf again. Nope. Just dust and one lonely reed. You pause, stylus hovering. Technically, you could lie. but then you'd risk the wrath of the Feather Guardian, a cranky priest named Immerse, who once cursed someone with hiccups for stealing oil. You mark it honestly. Fan 4. Missing moving on. Fan 5. Tiny decorative, probably symbolic, made of copper strips instead of feathers, used during funerals, allegedly to guide the soul upward. Scholars still debate whether it was meant to cool the corpse or the attending mourners. Either way, it's here. You tap it gently. It makes a metallic chime, like a bell trying to clear its throat as you continue down the inventory list. The oddities grow. Fan 9, carved ivory handle, inscribed with a star map. Definitely ceremonial, possibly from Elam, possibly fake. 1. Priest insists it was a gift from a sky envoy. He also eats chalk for visions, so. Grain of salt. Fan 12. Ostrich feathers, dyed crimson. Supposedly used once by a royal concubine priestess during a solar crisis. Her name, is scratched in jagged lines on the base. Some say she stopped the sun from vanishing. Others say she bribed the astronomers to fudge the data. Either way, the fan is still heronded, somehow still smells faintly of roses and rebellion. Then tucked in the back corner of the chamber, behind a cracked jar of lion grease, don't ask, you spot something odd, not listed on the tablet. A fan wrapped in old cloth, tied with a red ribbon faded to dusty pink. You unwrap it carefully. The feathers are black. Crow, maybe. Or raven. The handle is made of dark wood, almost obsidian, and there's a single symbol carved at the top. An open eye with tears falling into a bowl. You shiver, not from cold, from the kind of chill that tiptoes up your spine and knocks gently on your brain. You glance back at the assistant, who's half asleep against the doorframe. Hey, you call softly. What's this one? He peers at it, squints and shrugs. Dunno, probably ceremonial. Everything in here is ceremonial. Then, it's extra ceremonial. Helpful. You wrap it back up and mark it. Unknown fan, black, not listed bladder. You'll ask Immerse about it. He'll mutter something about dark rites and a fan that saw the sun die, and you'll decide to stop asking questions. But for now, the inventory is done. You return the stylus, stretch your back, and promise yourself a nap, or at least a snack, something with honey, or figs, or both. You've earned it. As you step out into the temple courtyard again, the last of the sun is slipping behind the ziggurat. The light catches on the golden feathers of one of the still ceremonial fans, resting on a stand nearby. You watch as a breeze lifts the edge of it just slightly, enough to suggest movement, presence, attention. You nod toward it. See you in the morning. It's well past sunset now, and the temple has exhaled. The courtyards are quiet. The pigeons have roosted in the alcoves. The incense that once flooded the halls now lingers as a faint, ghostly sweetness on the air like memory. You pad softly across the worn tiles, your sandals making the only sound. The stars are out sharp and numerous, unfazed by your small existence. You tilt your head back, gazing at them for a moment too long, until your neck protests. You always forget how heavy the sky looks at night. Your destination tonight isn't your straw mat, or even the storeroom for feather fans. It's the observatory tower, perched at the temple's highest point. Not everyone is allowed up there. But you've been summoned by one of the stargazers, a priest who speaks more to planets than people, and has the social warmth of a damp brick. You climb the long spiral staircase, carved straight into the ziggurat's core. Each step is uneven, as if daring you to stub a toe. The walls narrow the higher you go. And you imagine what might happen if the sun caught you up here, mid-worship, trespassing on sacred air. At the top, the door creaks open into a stone platform, open to the night. There he is, the stargazer wrapped in a wool cloak, hunched over a clay tablet, and grumbling at Venus. You offer the usual greeting. He waves vaguely, then jabs his stylus toward a stool. "You've worked the feather fans," he says, without looking. Obviously you reply, "Good. Then you'll understand wind." You nod, because why not? Wind is a concept. Air, movement, spirit, maybe. Also an excellent excuse to not hear your chores being assigned from across the courtyard. He gestures toward the sky. "Tell me what you see." You squint upward. Stars. Lots of them. One particularly bright one near the horizon. Mars, probably. Or a street lamp from the gods. "I see the usual," he grunts. "Do you see the breathing? The what now?" He picks up a long, narrow feather, black, thin, and slightly iridescent, holds it upright. It quivers just slightly in the breeze. "The wind breathes," he mutters, "as does the sky, as does the god. The fan's job is to remind us, this is not the conversation you expected tonight." He explains, sort of. Long ago, or maybe not so long ago. Dates are tricky when you're talking to a man who tracks time by moon phases. The priests believed the movement of fans mirrored the movement of celestial energy. To wave a fan toward the rising sun wasn't just cooling a god or showing reverence, it was participation in a cosmic exchange. "Fans don't just push air," he says, tapping the feather against your arm. "They carry intention. They're shaped like wings for a reason." Historians still argue whether this sky breath theory was a formal doctrine or just something a few stargazers made up after inhaling too much sandalwood smoke. But some tablets suggest rituals where the exact number of fan waves had to match the observed beats of stellar breaths, a mystical rhythm you still can't hear, no matter how hard you try. He offers you a small fan, smaller than any ceremonial one you've seen. Just 3 white feathers bound with a silver wire. "Try it," he says. "Slow listen." So like an obedient pigeon, you wave it slowly through the air. At first nothing, just the soft whiff of motion. But then something subtle. The breeze pushing back, a slight resistance, a rhythm. Maybe it's your imagination. Maybe it's divine ASMR. Maybe it's your arm getting tired. You do it again. This time, you imagine the fan catching the breath of a god, some enormous unseen presence, exhaling softly across the sky. You imagine Shamash himself leaning forward, amused and saying, "Finally, someone gets it." You blink, pause, and shake your head. "Was that something?" you ask. The stargazer nods slowly. "You're listening. That's something." He hands you a scrap of parchment, drawn with strange wave patterns and dots like musical notes. It's supposedly a map of fan rhythms matched to star movements. You're pretty sure it's just a fancy way to get out of sweeping duty, but still. You roll it carefully and tuck it into your belt. "Do you believe it?" you ask. "All this wind and breath stuff?" The priest shrugs. "It's not about belief. It's about what you're willing to pay attention to. You think back to all those hours waving the feather fan at the sun, the slow arcs, the burning arm, the momentary shimmers of air catching the light. Maybe there was more happening than sweat and ceremony, or maybe not. Still, there's something comforting about the idea that even gods need air moved around now and then. You descend the stairs sometime later, your feet finding their rhythm by memory. The stars stay fixed above you, and the wind stirs just enough to whisper across your cheek at the base of the temple. You pass a group of novice priests, arguing over whether the fan ceremony should use ostrich feathers or heron. Ostrich is better weight, one insists. Heron is holier, another retorts. You don't stop. You just wave your hand in a lazy arc, featherless, but somehow appropriate. The air stirs. They pause. See. You say divine motion. You leave them blinking and walk toward your mat. The night pressing softly around you like velvet. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another round of waving. And maybe, just maybe, you'll feel the breath of the sky again, or at least get to sit in the shade. You wake before the sun. Again, it's not noble, it's not spiritual, it's the pigeons. They're arguing on the roof, as they do every morning. Like they're settling old vendettas in pigeon court. You groan, roll over, and slap blindly at your blanket, which is somehow both damp and sandy. The sky outside is still bruised with early dawn deep purples and a smear of orange like someone spilled pomegranate syrup across it. The temple stirs quietly. You hear soft footsteps, a wooden bucket scraping stone, and the gentle splatter of water being thrown across the walkway to settle the dust. Another day begins. But today is different. You've been chosen, selected, really to assist in the festival of the first gaze, a biannual ceremony that marks the sun's first eye aligning with a specific point on the temple's highest lintel. It's considered an omen day, full of portents and awkwardly cheerful songs sung off-key. And of course it involves feather fans, lots of them. You're handed one immediately upon reporting to the inner courtyard. It's huge, eagle feathers, wide and heavy, attached to a carved sandalwood handle inscribed with prayers and what looks suspiciously like an old shopping list. You take your place in the eastern colonnade, flanked by other junior fan-bearers. You're told to wave in synchrony 3 long strokes, 1 short flick. Repeat if your timing's off. The high priest will glare at you with the power of 10 eclipses. The fan cuts the morning air like a ritual pendulum. Slow, steady, you feel ridiculous, mystical, sweaty. It's a rich mix. The sun rises. Right on cue, a golden beam shoots through the stone slit in the temple's outer gate and strikes the central altar like an invitation. Trumpets sound. The crowd murmurs. Somewhere, a child drops a clay cup and is immediately shushed into eternal silence. You wave like the fate of your cereal portions depends on it. Which, given temple politics, it might. According to temple lore, this moment when the beam hits the altar precisely as the sun's first gaze upon the mortal world for the season. A good alignment foretells peace, a crooked beam, famine, locusts, or worse, having to eat barley porridge for 6 straight weeks. Historians still argue whether this alignment was pure architectural genius or an astronomically lucky accident. The slit is only wide enough for sunlight to pass through it just so on 2 mornings per year. And you're standing there, sweating beneath a headdress, hoping your elbow isn't drifting out of formation. To your left, one of the other bearers sneezes mid-flick, knocking his fan sideways. Everyone freezes. The high priest's gaze lands on him with the precision of a hawk diving for a mouse. There's a silent verdict. You're on pigeon coop duty for a month. You continue, your wrist aching, the fan getting heavier by the second. But the sunlight is glorious, now spilling golden across the temple like honey across warm bread. The feathers catch it and shimmer faintly with each motion. You can almost believe you're stirring divine breath. Just like the stargazer said, as the chant begins low, rhythmic, soothing you, enter a sort of trance. The beat of the drums, the rustle of fans, the subtle sway of bodies in reverence. You stop thinking about your sore shoulders or the slight cramp in your left foot. You just wave. 3 strokes. 1 flick, breathe, and then something happens. You catch it out of the corner of your aja shimmer, just above the altar. Not smoke, not heat, but something stranger. Like the air briefly held a shape, a ripple, a form. You blink. It's gone. No one else reacts. Maybe you imagined it, or maybe not. Later, during cleanup, you try to describe it to one of the older priests. He pauses, mid-oil rub of a ceremonial panther statue, and says, "Ah, the shimmer, the shimmer." He nods. Sometimes the sun winks. "It's rare," he says, almost wistfully. "It means the gods are watching back." Just briefly. Don't wave the fan wrong after that. They'll notice. Noted as the sun climbs higher, the ritual ends, and people disperse grumbling about the heat, checking their sandals for scorpions, comparing bead necklaces like they're at a surprisingly devout farmer's market. You carry your fan back to the storage alcove. You handle it carefully now. It's not just feathers on a stick. It's possibly a direct line to a celestial eye that winks at you through stone. And when you slide it into its niche on the shelf, you do so gently, whispering, "Thank you." Whether you're thanking the fan, the god, or your own wrist for surviving, you're not entirely sure. You step outside into the brightness. The day is hot. The pigeons are louder. And you, for once, feel a little taller, because today, you weren't just a tired apprentice waving feathers for an invisible audience. You were part of something ancient, something that might have shimmered back. And hey, your strokes were perfectly in sync. So maybe, just maybe, no barley porridge this year. Days pass in the temple like a slow river, sometimes smooth, sometimes filled with unexpected pebbles of chaos. You're still the official feather fan waver, the chosen arm of the god's breeze, and the only person who knows exactly where the mysterious black fan lives. Tonight, however, something different stirs in the air. The high priest has declared a special event. A solar eclipse is due, and the temple will perform the Veil of Shadows ritual. This isn't just your average wave feathers and pray kind of ceremony. No, it's when the sun disappears, and the world holds its breath. You prepare accordingly, donning a ceremonial robe that's far too heavy for the still warm evening, and grabbing your most ornate fan peacock feathers, shimmering blues and greens that catch the torchlight. It's said to hold powers of protection during darkness. Whether that's superstition or actual divine intervention, you're not taking chances. The temple courtyard is packed with priests, acolytes, and a handful of nobles, all craning their necks toward the sky. The ziggurat's summit is aglow with oil lamps, their flickering flames casting long, trembling shadows on the crowd. You settle into your position near the altar, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of crushed herbs. Your heart races in rhythm with the steady chanting that rolls out from the priests, a low, pulsating hum meant to call the sun back from the shadows. Historians still argue whether these chants were a sincere plea or more of a way to drown out nervous murmurs among the crowd. You're inclined to think it was a bit of both. Then it happens. The sun slips behind the moon and the world dims. A hush falls over the temple, so deep it feels like the very stones are holding their breath. The temperature drops suddenly enough that you can see your breath puffing in the air, and your fan feels almost cold in your hand. You wave the peacock fan slowly, deliberately, feeling the feathers brush the air as if to push the darkness back. You notice a few of the priest's hands trembling either from cold or awe, or maybe from the overwhelming desire not to mess this up. In the fading light, the fans catch and scatter the torch flames, creating a flickering kaleidoscope of color around the courtyard. It's hypnotic. Even the most skeptical nobles seem entranced as the eclipse reaches totality. You glance toward the ziggurat's summit. There, the black fan, remember, the one you found wrapped in dusty cloth, is held aloft by Eresh, the cranky feather guardian. The black feathers absorb the dim light, seeming to drink in the shadows like a silent sentinel. Some say the black fan is a relic from a forgotten cult that worshipped the night sky instead of the sun. Others argue it symbolizes the balance between light and darkness, life and death. Either way, Eresh treats it with a reverence that borders on fear. You feel a strange connection to the scene, like the fans and the darkness are engaged in an ancient dialogue you're only just beginning to understand. The eclipse wanes, light seeps back in slow, gentle waves, the air warming and the shadows retreating. The chanting fades into whispered prayers. You lower your fan, exhausted but exhilarated. For a moment, the temple feels timeless, caught between the pulse of sun and moon, between feather and breath, and as the sun fully re-emerges, the crowd bursts into relieved cheers, laughter bubbling up like released air. You tuck your peacock fan away carefully, heart still thudding with the memory of darkness held at bay by feathers and faith. Later, when the night has fully claimed the city and the temple quiets to a peaceful murmur, you wonder, what did the black fan see in those shadows? And what secrets does the wind carry when the sun sleeps? Maybe tomorrow's duties will bring answers. Or maybe just more feathers. Either way, you're ready to wave. The days blur into nights, and the ritual rhythm of the temple settles around you like a well-worn cloak. You become so accustomed to the feather fans that their soft rustle is your constant companion, like a lullaby the gods hum just for you. Tonight, however, something unexpected interrupts the steady flow. You're summoned to the scriptorium, a cool, shadowy room filled with clay tablets stacked in towers and the smell of dried ink. The scribe, a wiry man named Nabo, peers up from his work with an expression somewhere between curiosity and suspicion. Been waving the fans with more spirit lately, he says. It's noticeable. You shrugged, pretending not to be flattered. Well, I have to keep the gods entertained somehow. He grins, revealing a few missing teeth. True enough, but I think there's more to it. You're not just moving air, you're moving something else. I've been studying some old tablets that mention fan breath as a conduit for divine messages. You raise an eyebrow. Messages. He nods enthusiastically and pulls a tablet closer. The cuneiform marks glitter faintly in the torchlight. According to these, feather fans weren't just ceremonial tools, they were believed to carry prayers and intentions directly to the gods, like whispers on the wind. Historians still argue whether this was metaphorical or if there was a belief that fans literally transmitted divine energy. But Nabo insists that the exact pattern and speed of fan waves were crucial in decoding these messages. You listen, intrigued, as he reads aloud a passage describing a ritual where the priests choreographed fan movements like a language, communicating with celestial beings. Imagine, Nabo says dreamily, waving your fan not just to cool the sun but to send it a message. We see you. We honor you. Please bless us. You imagine it too. You, a humble fan waver, holding a secret line to the heavens. Like a cosmic text message sender before smartphones. He offers you a small, delicate fan made of swan feathers, said to be especially good at carrying prayers. It feels light and fragile in your hands. Try sending a message. Nabo suggests with a wink. So, you wave, slowly, deliberately. 3 strokes, a pause, 2 flicks. You wonder if someone on the other side is watching, what might they think? Hey, a particularly polite mortal. Nice to see you. Later, you practice in solitude, experimenting with rhythms and speeds. You begin to see patterns in the way the air responds, subtle changes in the breeze that seem to echo your movements. You can't shake the feeling that the fans are more than tools. They're instruments tuned to an ancient frequency. Outside, the city sleeps beneath a quilt of stars. The wind stirs gently through the temple's columns, and you feel as if the night itself listens. Maybe Nabo is on to something. Maybe the fans are the oldest kind of wireless connection, or maybe it's just the incense playing tricks on your mind again. Either way, you tuck the swan feather fan carefully into your belt and whisper, message sent. You wake to a soft chorus of temple bells, their metallic voices blending with the rustle of feathers and the distant murmur of the city awakening. The courtyard is damp with dew, the air crisp and cool, carrying the scent of crushed mint and sun-baked stone. Today your task is to prepare the fans themselves, the tools of your daily devotion. The temple's artisans keep a workshop behind the ziggurat's western wing, where skilled hands carve, bind, and paint feathers for ceremonies, large and small. You make your way there, the cool morning light casting long shadows along the dust-flecked path. Inside, the workshop is a symphony of motion, artisans murmuring incantations as they dip feathers in vibrant dyes, others threading thin strips of leather to bind feathers into elegant shapes, while the faint smell of beeswax and resin fills the air. You run your fingers over a freshly made fan, a delicate assembly of white goose feathers, polished and gleaming, the handle engraved with symbols of protection. The chief craftsman, an elderly man with paint-splattered robes, nods to you. Every feather must be perfect. Imperfections distract the gods. You nod solemnly, aware that a single flaw could mean your fan's blessing is lost. You join the workers in assembling a batch of fans for the upcoming harvest festival. The ritual demands an array of fans, large and small, ornate and simple, each with a purpose. Some are used to cool sacred fires, others to summon breezes believed to carry prayers, and a few are reserved for the high priest's exclusive use, adorned with rare feathers and precious metals. Interestingly, a local myth insists that the fan's feathers are collected only from birds that have flown at dawn, their first flight said to capture the sun's purest breath. Whether fact or fanciful storytelling, it adds a layer of sacred mystery to your otherwise dusty task. Historians still debate how much practical craftsmanship influenced religious symbolism in making. Did artisans design fans primarily for function, or did every curve and feather placement encode spiritual meaning? The truth likely lies somewhere between a blend of faith and artistry. As you work, your fingers deftly maneuver through the feathers, feeling the softness, the weight, the subtle differences between species. You recall the stargazer's words about feathers as wings, carriers of intention, and wonder how many unseen prayers have been carried on these delicate surfaces. One apprentice nearby hums a tune you recognize, a lullaby your mother used to sing. The melody blends with the clatter of tools and your steady breath, grounding you in this moment where the ancient and everyday intertwine by the time the sun has climbed high. The fans are complete teach. One a silent messenger, ready to breathe life into ritual and myth alike. You pause, holding a small fan of swan feathers, their pure white glow almost iridescent in the midday light. You feel a flicker of reverence. These fans are more than tools. They are threads in the tapestry connecting mortal hands to divine breath, and as you step outside, the afternoon breeze teasing your hair, you realize that whether the gods truly respond or not, the fans themselves hold a power all their own, the power to make the invisible feel real. The evening settles in like a soft, warm blanket, wrapping the temple in a gentle hush broken only by the faint clatter of sandals and the occasional coo of pigeons nesting in the high stone ledges. You find yourself wandering toward the outer garden, a hidden oasis of date palms and fragrant herbs where priests often meditate and contemplate the cosmos. The garden feels like a secret, ancient and sacred, yet peaceful enough to catch a stray cat napping among the olive trees. Tonight, the air carries a whisper of something different. The wind is softer, warmer, as if the gods themselves are taking a breath after the day's bustle. You spot an elderly priest sitting on a low stone bench, fingers tracing the edges of a delicate fan adorned with peacock feathers, the same type you wielded during the eclipse ritual. His eyes, bright with the calmness of decades, lift to meet yours. He gestures for you to sit. Do you know why we greet the sun with fans? He asks, voice low and rich, like the deep tone of temple bells at dusk. You shrug, half expecting the usual answer about cooling the air or warding off evil spirits. He smiles gently. It is not just for the sun's comfort, but to honor the breath of life itself. The sun breathes light and warmth into the world. Our fans stir the air as a sign of respect, a dance of gratitude. You consider this, picturing the fans as extensions of the temple's heartbeat, breathing with the sun, fanning its divine breath into all corners of creation. He continues. Some say the feathers once carried messages from the gods. Others believe they chased away darkness and evil, yet others think it was simply a beautiful tradition that grew into something sacred. Historians still argue whether these meanings changed over time or were always woven together. The priest's gaze drifts toward the horizon, where the last light is melting behind the city's silhouette. But beyond all that, he says softly, there is a feeling, an unspoken bond between mortal and divine, carried on the wings of feathers. You nod, feeling a warmth deeper than the fading sun. The fans suddenly feel heavier with meanings of connection, reverence, and hope. A gentle breeze stirs, and you lift your own fan, waving it slowly. Feeling the air shift and shimmer like a whispered prayer, the priest chuckles. Not bad for a novice. You smile, knowing that in this quiet garden, beneath the fading light, the ancient ritual breathes on soft, steady, and alive. Night deepens over the temple, draping everything in a velvet cloak speckled with stars. You stand at the edge of the sacred pool, where the moon's reflection dances softly on the water's surface, rippling with the occasional leap of a fish or the gentle landing of a night insect. The air is thick with the scent of lotus blossoms and the faint smoke of burning incense. Tonight is the night breeze ceremony, an event few outsiders know about, a quiet ritual where fans are used not to greet the sun, but to honor the night's cool breath. It's an odd reversal from the daytime fan waving, but somehow, the meaning feels just as powerful. You are handed a fan made from the feathers of a night owl, deep, dusky gray, almost black, edged with silvery white. The feathers feel soft, but resilient, as if they carry the essence of shadows within their fibers. The priests gather in a circle around the pool, their murmured chants a gentle counterpoint to the chirping cicadas. The atmosphere feels intimate, like a secret shared between the night sky and the earth below. As you wave your owl feather fan slowly, a cool breeze stirs, carrying the faint sound of distant drums and the rustle of palm fronds. The fan's movements create patterns in the air, almost like silent musica dialogue between the earth's breath and the unseen forces that dwell in darkness. Historians still debate the origins of the night breeze ritual. Some believe it developed from ancient beliefs in the protective power of the night, while others think it was a later addition to balance the overwhelming focus on sun worship. Regardless, its quiet grace offers a moment of reflection and peace. You find yourself watching the pool's surface, where the moonlight shimmers like scattered silver coins. The reflection warps and shifts with each movement of your fan, as if the water itself responds to your gestures. A sudden rustle behind you startles a nearby priest, who drops his fan with a soft clatter. The mood lightens with a shared chuckle, reminding everyone that even in the sacred there's room for human moments. You continue waving, the rhythm becoming almost hypnotic. You feel a connection not only to the ceremony but to the very night, its mysteries, its silences, its quiet power. As the ritual winds down, the priests extinguish their candles, leaving only the stars and the moon to watch over the temple. You tuck your owl feather fan carefully away, the softness lingering in your fingers like a secret touch. Stepping back into the shadowed corridors of the temple, you carry with you a new appreciation for the sun, for the night, and for the humble fans that bridge the two. The temple is quiet now, the heavy bustle of daytime worship replaced by the soft rustling of nocturnal life. You wander the stone corridors, your footsteps echoing faintly as you pass carved reliefs of sun gods and winged creatures, their faces worn smooth by time and prayer. In the stillness, you pause before the shrine of Shamash, the sun god himself, whose golden rays seem to shimmer even in the dim light. Your hands rest lightly on your favorite feather fantha, one with the peacock feathers, vibrant even in the muted temple glow. It's strange to think how something as simple as a fan could hold such importance. You remember the stories, the priests greeting the sun with feather fans to cool its fiery face, the fans carrying prayers, even the shadowed mystery of the black fan held during eclipses. Historians still debate how much of this was ritual, how much was symbolism, and how much might have been practical. Maybe the fans were simply tools to keep the sun's heat at bay. Or maybe they were a language, a gesture of love and respect between mortals and gods. As you wave your fan gently, you think about the balance, the dance between light and shadow, heat and coolness, day and night. Each wave a whisper, each breeze a prayer. Outside, the first birds of dawn begin their tentative calls, threading the silence with notes of awakening. The temple will soon stir again, and the cycle will continue. But for now, you breathe in the quiet, feeling the connection that fans have long carried across time between humans and the vast, shimmering sky above. You close your eyes briefly, letting the soft hum of the morning air wash over you, the faint feathered breeze lulling you into a peaceful calm. The sun will rise again. The fans will wave once more, and you, the humble bearer of feathers, will be there steady, patient, part of a story as old as light itself. The day's stories now fold gently into twilight, the temple's ancient stones softening beneath the evening's tender touch. You feel the weight of time pressing lightly on your shoulders, not heavy, but like a warm shawl woven from threads of sunbeams and whispers. Let your breath slow, becoming steady and calm, like the flutter of feathers in a gentle breeze. Imagine the fans you've held light, soft, whispering against the air, carrying the prayers and hopes of countless hands before you. The sun's warmth fades, but its memory lingers, mingling with the coolness of night. Feel the balance between heat and chill, light and shadow, and let that balance settle inside you. Close your eyes if you like, and let the quiet temple guide you into rest, the soft rustle of feathers and the distant call of the stars soothing you deeper. Tomorrow, the sun will greet you again, but for now, drift slowly into calm, held by the ancient breath of wind and feather. Sleep well, sweet dreams.